I'm not getting up for some small-town judge. I pay more in taxes than he earns." The sentence sliced through the courtroom like a blade. Preston Hargrove stayed planted in his chair, legs crossed, posture stiff with entitlement. Officer Mendes, the bailiff, had already called for everyone to rise, once, twice, 3 times. Preston hadn't budged. "Sir," Mendes repeated, jaw tightening, "when the judge enters, you stand. That's the rule." "That's a rule for people who don't have options," Preston said dryly. "When you have the right kind of money, everything is optional." Judge Raymond Crossman walked toward the bench and took in the scene. A 38-year-old man in a tailored navy suit, refusing even the simplest gesture of respect. It wasn't the first time Judge Crossman had witnessed arrogance, but this was something different, something practiced, something deliberate. What Preston Hargrove didn't know, what he could never have imagined, was that the 73-year-old man he had nearly run down in a parking lot weeks earlier was not an ordinary stranger. Leonard Briggs had served as a combat medic in Vietnam. He had taken shrapnel in both legs during the Tet Offensive. And half a century ago, in a swampy rice field nearly 10,000 miles from this courtroom, he had carried a wounded soldier to safety under heavy fire. That soldier's name was Daniel Hargrove, Preston's father, the man whose empire Preston inherited, the man whose survival and fortune existed only because Leonard Briggs refused to leave him behind. And Judge Crossman knew every detail. "Tell us where you're watching from," the narrator's voice echoed, because what was about to unfold would become one of the most replayed courtroom moments in American online history. 10:11 a.m. Thursday. Case file 2026 TR 4419 was about to redefine Preston Hargrove's entire life. Clerk Donnelly adjusted her microphone, her voice steady despite the tension heavy enough to press on every rib in the room. Case 2026 TR 4419. The City of Providence versus Preston James Hargrove. Charges include reckless operation of a vehicle, harassment, willful endangerment of a pedestrian, and contempt of court. Preston didn't look at her. "I'm not answering to charges read by a clerk. My attorneys deal with this level of nonsense." Judge Crossman folded his hands. "Mr. Hargrove, you are in active contempt of court for refusing to stand. Shall we add more to that charge, or would you prefer to participate like a respectful adult?" "I'd prefer to know why I'm here wasting my morning." 10:13 a.m. Defendant still seated. Contempt noted. Bailiff watching closely. Judge Crossman reviewed the thick file before him, pages of employee complaints, settlements, reports of verbal abuse, evidence of a man raised without consequences. "Mr. Hargrove, the court has security footage, an officer report, a witness voicemail, and a series of text messages. Would you like to explain what happened on the afternoon of September 19? "Nothing happened," Preston said with a bored shrug. "Some old man with a cane took forever crossing the lot. I honked. He acted like he was being attacked. The footage shows you came within 2 feet of hitting him. He should have moved faster." "Not my responsibility. Mr. Briggs is a disabled veteran whose mobility is limited by combat injuries." Preston rolled his eyes. "Again, not my responsibility." But Judge Crossman had spent decades reading people. Beneath the bravado he saw it, an emptiness unique to men who inherited everything but earned nothing. "Mr. Hargrove, what did you expect would happen when you refused to stand for this court?" Preston smirked. "I expected you'd recognize I'm not like the others who come through here." "Why would I recognize that?" "Because I own half the properties within walking distance of this courthouse. I employ hundreds of people, and I donate more money than the city sees in grants. I matter, that old man doesn't." "Who?" "The guy I supposedly almost hit." "You mean Mr. Leonard Briggs, the veteran." Preston dismissed it with a flick of his wrist. "People who can't move quickly shouldn't be in public areas. Common sense." A text message appeared on the screen. A message Preston had sent minutes after the incident. "Almost ran over some old guy today. He froze like a statue. LOL. Doesn't matter, courts bow to money in this state." Lawyers will erase it. Judge Crossman read it aloud. The smirk on Preston's face faltered. Your Honor, Preston snapped, that was a private message. Private or not, it reveals your attitude toward the law. It was a joke, is it? You accused this court of bowing to money. It's not an accusation, it's observation. Officer Julian Pike stepped forward to testify. When I arrived, he said, Mr. Briggs was shaking and leaning on a car for support. He said the defendant's vehicle came so close he felt the air pressure from it. And the defendant, the judge asked, still in the garage. He refused to answer my questions, told me my salary wasn't worth 5 minutes of his time, and said the victim should stay home if he can't walk like a normal person. Judge Crossman turned to Preston. Did you tell an officer you wish you had hit Mr. Briggs? Preston inhaled sharply. People say things when they're annoyed. People in the gallery gasped softly. Mr. Briggs, Judge Crossman said gently, would you like to speak? Leonard Briggs rose slowly, using his cane. Every step looked like it demanded negotiation with pain. Your Honor, he said quietly, I haven't moved quickly since 1968. When shrapnel tore through my legs, the doctors said I'd never walk again. But I fought back. I learned to move slowly, but I learned to move. He looked at Preston. When that car came at me, I knew I couldn't jump aside. I thought, after surviving Vietnam, this is how I die. In a parking garage because someone didn't want to wait 5 seconds. Preston yawned loudly. A witness voicemail played next. I saw the whole thing, said Maria Gonzalez. The driver sped around the corner, missed the old man by inches, then yelled at him to move faster. I dialed 911 immediately. Judge Crossman turned to Preston again. Did you yell, move faster, old man? I don't remember. I was late for a meeting. Mr. Briggs served 2 tours defending a country that gave you those meetings. Does his service mean anything to you? Preston shrugged. Everyone has a sob story, Judge, doesn't make him special. But then Crossman shifted the room. Mr. Hargrove, you donate to charities, correct, including veteran programs. Yes, my father supported those causes. He served in Vietnam. And do you know why he supported those causes so fiercely? Preston blinked. He never said. Clerk Donnelly handed the judge a sealed note from the foundation records. Mr. Hargrove, the judge said, the single largest grant from your family's foundation, over 5 consecutive years, went to the Providence Veterans Rehabilitation Center. Preston nodded slowly. Yes, Father believed in supporting veterans. And do you know who the primary beneficiary of that center was? No, Leonard J. Briggs. Preston froze. And do you know, Judge Crossman continued, that your father visited him personally every year until he passed? What? No, that can't be right. It's more than right. Your father personally set up those grants after learning Mr. Briggs was receiving treatment there. Preston stared at Leonard Briggs, confusion overtaking arrogance. Judge Crossman continued. In 1968, during the Tet Offensive, your father was a 19-year-old private who was shot twice and left bleeding in a rice field. He believed he was going to die. Preston swallowed. Until a medic crawled through bullets to reach him, dragged him over 300 yards, took shrapnel in both legs because he refused to leave your father behind. The judge pointed toward Leonard. That medic was Mr. Briggs. The room fell into stillness so absolute it felt like time paused. Preston looked at Leonard like he was seeing a ghost. Judge Crossman's voice softened. Everything you inherited, your company, your wealth, your life, exists because Mr. Briggs refused to let your father die on a battlefield half a world away. Preston tried to speak, but nothing came out. Your father knew this, the judge continued. He spent decades supporting the man who saved him. He wrote in private letters that he was ashamed to tell his son the truth, not because of the sacrifice, but because he feared you wouldn't appreciate it. Leonard finally spoke again. Your dad was a good man, son, he said quietly. He felt guilty for what happened to me. I told him 100 times I'd do it again, but he carried that guilt and he carried worry that you were losing your way. Preston's eyes glistened. I didn't know any of this. Judge Crossman leaned forward. Would knowing have changed your behavior? Preston lowered his head. I honestly don't know, and that scares me. The judge nodded. That's exactly why this court must teach you what your father spent his life trying to teach you. He delivered the sentence. A handwritten apology to Mr. Briggs, 160 hours of service at the Elder Support Program, a Dignity and Respect training course. A return hearing in 160 days. Preston accepted every term. And then the months began. At first, he approached community service like a burden. He avoided eye contact, moved through tasks mechanically, counted minutes like they were shackles. But elderly veterans have a way of breaking down armor. By week 4, Preston had changed. By week 8, he had conversations slowing down his steps. By week 10, he had learned more about his father from these men than he had learned in his entire life. And by week 14, he finally spoke to Briggs again. Mr. Briggs, he said quietly, I don't think I've done anything in life that would make my father proud. Leonard touched his shoulder. You're doing it now. Day 160 arrived. Preston walked into the courtroom differently. No swagger, no arrogance, just truth. Judge Crossman reviewed his file. You completed all service, the judge noted. And according to staff, continued volunteering even after your obligation ended. Yes, Your Honor, I'm on the board now. We're expanding the Veterans Wing next year. What changed? The judge asked. Preston breathed in. I learned what my father understood. That money without meaning is empty. That power without compassion is cruelty. That being someone worth admiring matters more than being someone worth fearing. Leonard rose slowly. Your Honor, he said, when this began, I saw in Preston everything wrong with entitlement. I've since watched him become someone his father hoped he'd be. I believe the young man standing here today honors his father far better than the man who first entered this room. Preston wiped tears. Thank you for saving him, for saving me. Judge Crossman closed his file. Mr. Hargrove, when you first walked into this courtroom, you refused to stand. Today, you stand for something far more important: decency, compassion, humanity. These are the things your father valued. These are the things you are learning to value. He lifted his gavel. Case closed, Mr. Hargrove, and remember, respect cannot be purchased. It must be earned. One choice at a time. The gavel struck. And in a Providence courtroom, a man who once refused to stand for a judge finally learned what it meant to stand for the dignity of others.